Okay. All right. So let me just get these. Kateryn Ferreira, I know that, but let me get this name right. It's Jovenes Empower.
Jóvenes.
How you
Jóvenes
say it?
and power. Jóvenes,
Jovenes?
jóvenes and power.
Jovenes. Okay. That's youth, right? Is that what's.
Hmm.
Yeah. Again, took 3 years of high school
Yeah,
in Spanish. I don't know anything. I swear it's
that's good.
terrible. I did well, but I can't. This was a long time ago. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to start us off. I'm going to read your, I'll introduce it. I'll read your bio, and then thank you for that, by the way. And then we're just gonna go right into it, and we're really just gonna, discuss what we were discussing. But anything else that you feel that you want to throw in, feel free. We'll record for like an hour, and then let me just go over like a couple things. So um don't feel if you say something again that you're like, oops, whatever, I didn't want to put that out there, whatever, just let me know, because I edit this. Okay, it's not live. Anything can be edited. It's not a problem. Okay, and I might stop and start sometimes, whatever. Those things I'll just cut out. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else.
I wanted to record too, so I just wanted to let you know I can't record because you're recording. So when we do finish, if
Then
you
I'll send it
send
to you.
me, yeah, the audio and the video. Mhm.
Okay, so what I'll do is, are you on OneDrive or Google? Like cyber, are you on some kind of cyber storage? I can send it through you to you
Google. I
through
use Google.
Google Drive.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'll send it to you. I'll make our folder through Google Drive, so that I'll just put everything in that, and then I'll, start it off with the Zoom, so that you could do it whatever you want with it. I also record a couple, I record separate tracks for the Zoom, so that, there'll be one of both of us together, and then there'll be one of me, one of you talking, with two different tracks, but going along the same. And
Hmm.
I like to use the editing with that, because then I could knock something out that I say that I don't like or whatever. And then, like I said, when we're done, like between now and Sunday, just get to me like some pictures or whatever that you would like to be associated with the episode, and then I could generate some, promos from it.
Okay.
Like I said, I have your bio. Oh, also at the end, I'll ask you to, rattle off your handle, whatever your social media is, and your website, and all your, links that people can find you. So just, be aware when I do that, whatever. Just give it to me. And I think that's all I have to say right now, but whatever. I'll remember as we go. Okay, so we are recording. Okay. So I'm going to start. Hello, this is Jen Gata Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. I'm thrilled to announce our guest today is someone who's in the mental health podcasting realm as well. I'm thrilled to have her. Her name is Kateryn Ferreira. She is the CEO of Geminme. She offers services as a life coach and creates communities such as these to empower women to become the best version of themselves. She also serves as a director of an international youth group called Jóvenes Empower, focused on helping young people to grow and take control of their future. And as a first generation Dominican American born and raised in Washington Heights, Kateryn has always carried a spirit of perseverance within her. She has been able to reach her goals and accomplish several incredible challenges at a young age. She has 8 years of experience working in public health. She had the honor of working on the front lines of COVID-19 for New York City as a community engagement supervisor. Kateryn worked hard while studying and working full time, which she acknowledges was difficult and stressful at times. However, this did not prevent her from graduating magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Health Service Administration from CUNY. She then earned a master's in public health, also from CUNY, After finishing her studies, she focused on creating her own brand and podcast called Geminme The Podcast to promote mental health, self-development, and growth. Finally, she is co-author of today's Inspired Young Latina Volume 2 and Hispanic Star Rising, The New Face of Power, Volume 1. Kateryn, welcome to Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored, right, to be here, sharing the space with you and talking about things that, people don't talk about that have to be spoken of, because I feel like a lot of us feel lonely, but this is why we create these platforms, right, to be able to create that community. And here we are. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
And it's a really important community because, as you know, I was going through all your material. One of the things I love about you is that you are trying to normalize the conversation. And
Yes.
that's so important because people need to feel that they could talk about this stuff. And if they don't, that's when things build up and there's distress that is inevitably harmful in our lives occurs. So thank you for doing what you do. And please share with us one of the things that you talk about in your podcast, and you open it up with this, is that the power is within each one of us. And, I love that sentiment. Would you tell us a little bit about how you found your power within you? And, we had discussed our backgrounds, and I know you come from a Latino family, and you've mentioned the intergenerational trauma, then you had a single mom. Can you just like go over a few of your, I guess, challenges in early life and how you overcame it?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that question. It's very complex, but I would start from yes. So I was born into a household of a single mom, and both of my parents are cousins, right? So that's like already like right something very, I would say, out of the norm
Mm-hmm.
for most people. So I bring that up to say, not, I mean, some of it like create a shame, right, of me
Mm-hmm.
knowing like, oh, my parents are cousins. But like my mom says it like very openly because obviously she's proud, right? Like she would be, right? But for me, for a very long time, that created shame. So that was like, right, from conception, right, that was like already something that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up in a household of a single mom, she always was working, right, trying to provide and be working to provide for myself, and then later on my little sister. So I became very independent, right, in this scenario of having to do stuff for myself. She wasn't emotionally or physically available at many times because she didn't have it within her, right? And so this independence, this isolation in a sense, really kind of build up in me to like be independent and not really rely maybe on others, right? And it's a curse and a blessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's things that we have to heal later on, and I'll talk about that a little later. But just being in that scenario, right, of like trying to advocate for yourself, do things for yourself, and later on for a little sister. So it's becoming an adult at a young age, not having a childhood, if you will, right? So that's already a scenario of like fastly growing and not really having that essence of childhood or that innocence, right? Because I was surrounded by adults and other things that happened to me, such as having adults maybe take advantage of you and things like that. So that's already something, right? Like we're building up on different things, and things build up over time. But I would say, right, so from all that, I would say adversity, right, childhood adversity, I build up and kind of build that strength or that muscle, right, of being independent, of advocating for myself, of doing it for me, of not maybe looking for validation of maybe parents or other people at all, right? And so my dad, I would say, he was there virtually. He will call me and support me and ask me, how's school, etc. Those questions that as a child you want to hear, right? And so I do thank my dad for being there. He has another marriage, so he was married and still married at the time, but yeah, he was there, and it was a balance, if you will, and it was a healthy balance, but at the same time, because of all the things that happened to me, I made bad choices, right, in middle school and things like that, because all that stuff is like seeking out for help and love, right, in the wrong places. And that happens, right? Things manifest in different avenues, in middle school, right, high school, right, in those very pivotal and challenging moments of my life. And so once I became an adult and I started realizing all these things that I've done before and all the things that I've been through, I'm like, okay, I have to heal. And that's when I was like, okay, like, all this happened to me. Yeah, I've been like killing it, if you will. Like, I'm still alive through all that, right?
Yeah.
But I have to heal. I have to become a better version of myself and not let all those circumstances and experiences really impact the person that I am today, because I am better, right? And that's where the power comes from, of taking control of your life and your past and kind of using that pain and making sure that it's your power, right, to move forward and to become the best version of yourself. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit of me and all the stuff that I've been through and how I use all that to manifest the power.
Well, I love it because, one of the things that you say is take control of your life. And it is possible. A lot of people who are suffering from mental distress, they enter, say, the mental health system, which is in dire need of reform. And they're told that they can't control their own lives, that they're broken, there's something wrong with their brains. But your message is so much deeper and so much more empowering. So that's why I was attracted to you right away, because I was like, oh gosh, she has the same message as me. Because, you know, as we've discussed, I'm a high critic of the way things are today, but I'm also looking for alternatives. I want people to know that there is another way to look at this stuff, that, life happens. Everyone has something that goes on in their lives that is either trauma inducing or we can't let go of, and it just eats us up. And there's so many healthy ways to attack it if we believe in ourselves, and give ourselves that power. So, when hearing a lot of what you have to say, what are some ways that are positive ways that we can assist our own development of mental wellness?
Yeah,
You like, what are your top favorite things?
I would say the first one is awareness,
Mm,
right? For me, if you don't know there's a problem, how are you going to fix it,
mm,
right? So, and it could be, right, not saying that our mental state is a problem, right? But it's something that maybe we want to fix that is not benefiting us in a positive way,
mhm,
right? So, um, just awareness of change has to happen, right? And that's the first step, knowing that you want to change, right? Wanting to change, because one thing is knowing it and the other thing is wanting different, right? And it takes a lot of courage, and fear is there, right? Doubt that you can do it, and then like creating a plan, right? Surrounding yourself with positive things. Something that I always like use is a filter, focus, and feed, right?
mm,
So filter your life from like negative stuff that are not good for you, people, right? uh Social media, whatever you're consuming, Netflix, movies, right? Like it could be music, whatever it is that you think that is like very dark or like very negative to your like vibes, right? We use the word vibes, but
mhm,
it's true. Like these things are impacting the ways that we feel, right? And then you focus, right, on things that are positive. Like, for example, something that I would say of an action plan is like, oh, maybe try meditating, right? Like,
mhm,
as very simple as it sounds, it's very hard. And at the beginning, it might be probably impossible to focus for like 5 minutes, but it takes practice and progress, right? It's not perfect or perfection. It's just taking a step and you'll feel better. You're like, oh, like this is really good. And then you'll be intentional next time, right?
mm,
And focusing on those things that you think that change your mood or your state, mental state. A lot of it has to do with mindset.
mm,
I feel like you know, it is true, you know, there are illnesses or things that are out of our control many times, right? It could be genetic or the circumstances that we're in, right? We can't change the outside. I mean, unfortunately, right? The only thing that we could change is within our thoughts, our behaviors, right? Our mindset, the way that we see the world sometimes, right? But yeah, just I feel like awareness, action, and changing your mindset. And then obviously seeking that help or that community. For example, I go to a therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of my community and my healing process, right? And I have friends who are also in that journey that we encourage each other, we're there for each other. So just like seeking people that are in that space that you want to be in, of recovery, of healing, of growth, of transformation, whatever it is that you want for your life, you have to be able to surround yourself with it. Because if you don't see it, you don't breathe it, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that the idea of this, and surrounding yourself with community that's supportive. And one of the things I love that you're doing, and me going back into teaching also at this time of my life, I'm feeling very empowered again to know that I can be in a position to help young people. The fact that you're doing this, you're creating a community for
Mhm.
these young people. I mean, it's really wild, and I love how you're out there doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about this youth program you run? Um,
Yeah.
what topics you cover and who's in it?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. I'm very empowered by this, and it's called Jóvenes Empower because I feel like the youth has so much power within them, and sometimes they get, you know, discouraged, distracted. They don't have the mentorship, the support, right? A lot of, like we said, childhood adversities and things that happen at home or not, you know, lack of support, right? From unfortunately, our parents don't have it within them. So it's lacking. They're lacking
Mhm.
a lot of support and guidance. And so I was like, okay, I want to create a system, a platform, right, that helps these youth from international countries, for example, Dominican Republic, Mexico, or the youth that I'm serving as of right now. And it's open to the globe, is open to the US, is open to, you know, Spanish speaking youth. And I want to serve my community because, like I said, I want to, you know, break that generational trauma, and this is part of that plan, right? To empower these youth to like take action, you know, set boundaries. We talk about professional, you know, careers. We talk about self-development, healing, the 5 love languages. We talk about so many things that they don't listen to in their normal lives or from their parents, right? So I have gotten that feedback from them. It's like they love this program because they get to speak about and they get access to professionals in different avenues and topics that they wouldn't be able to access elsewhere. So, you know, it really gives me a lot of emotion and happiness to be able to provide that. And I know it's going to be big, you know, bigger than the 18th youths that I have right now. Is going to be a bigger impact to be able to provide other things that not just education, but also resources in the future.
That is so great. I'm really it's great because you know it's something that so many people could do. You know what I mean? And yet I don't hear about it that often. So
Yeah,
I'm really happy that you're
thank
taking it
you.
on. The youth needs us, definitely. They need direction and they
They're
need
the
to know that
future.
they're supported. Exactly. They're the
Mhm.
future. We can't forget that. Um, one of the things again, how I mentioned before that, you're really into normalizing it, um, the discussion.
Mhm.
And you mentioned a few things that are positive ways that we can handle things that crop up. I remember you mentioning once that you had suffered personally from either anxiety or depression. I'm not sure. How did you personally get yourself out of that situation where you feel that you can now help others?
Yeah, I feel like I've battled with some sort of anxiety. You know, anxiety, I feel like is part of me. Like, if you're like, oh, I have, you know, anxiety, you're not alone. I feel like most of us do, and we're not diagnosed because we don't go to the doctor, right? And so anxiety is part of my life, just coping with it, right? Like it's like breathing, right? Like trying to manage your breathing, trying to manage your anxiety. And so for example, depression runs in my family, right? My father's mom used to take like antidepressants, right? And it's just part of like the thread of like our ancestors and the way that they lived and stuff like that. And honestly, it does carry, right? Like I have suffered from depression myself, and it's not maybe as obvious to others. Like if I tell my family or, you know, my friends like, oh, I had depression, like they were like, what? Like, right? Because you hide it and it comes out when you're alone or like when you're like isolated or many other ways, right? And so we're good at covering up, right? Covering up our depression, our anxiety, and we become experts at that, unfortunately. But I feel like when it actually came out, I would say was when I finished my studies, because I feel like my studies, the ones that you mentioned, um, they have really like distracted me, right? Like from that dopamine effects of like achieving and, you know, getting my degrees and getting great grades and working and, you know, friends. I'm not living in the city now, but when I used to live in the city, I was like either at happy hour, working, or in school. Right? And that's the thing that we do, we distract ourselves. So when we're quiet and still, right? And I feel like a lot of that was projected in for COVID, right? 2020, when we were forced to be home. And I was still working because I was part of the COVID front lines, but still like it was home or like, you know, very quiet, very little interaction with friends or outside world. And so you realize you're like, wow, like I never spent time reflecting my life or how I felt or what problems I want to solve within me, right? And so those things came up, right? And, you know, at first you're like saddened by it. And it's okay to be sad and to process it and know that it's maybe something that is not the best of you. And that's the point, like I said before, right? Awareness. But I knew that I wanted to change. I didn't want to stay there. I knew that I had a lot of work to do, and I still do, right? I'm here talking about it, about empowering, and it's still a process. Like I'm not to like perfection, and I don't get sad and I don't have blue days. Like it happens and it's part of the process. I feel like where we stay there and that blue dark hole, that's the problem, right? Because we might have bad days, right? It could be bad days, bad couple days, but if we stay there to weeks, months, and years, that's when it's, you know, very, very I would say challenging, right, for the person, for their well-being. And obviously, yes, seeking help, right? And it's hard to seek help, right? Because you feel like, oh, what are they going to say about me? And so one step that I took for myself when I realized that I had issues, or not issues, but I had things to resolve within me, right? I was like, okay, therapy. So that was my first step. And when I started therapy, I started like vocalizing like the ways I felt. Like, for example, something big that happened to me was like having a conversation with my mom for the first time about the way that I felt when I was being raised by her, and she wasn't available and she didn't show affection and all those stuff. And for me, that was healing. Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of people out there that have these very, you know, similar situations where they have stuff that they haven't vocalized or communicated to certain people in their life that are very important to them, and they live with that like rotting experience in them, and that kills them. Yeah. Right. It kills them because they're not vocalizing it, because they haven't healed, and they assume maybe the other person knows what's going on, but they don't, right? They're not psychic or know whatever you're thinking, right? And so there's a lot of resentment that was there because I didn't vocalize it before, right? Resentment, disappointment, and so many other things. And that was just my relationship with my mom. Imagine, right? Like other relationships that I didn't heal from, or my parent, my dad, or my grandma, or whatever it is. It could be endless amount of relationships that are built within us. And they kind of, you're like, oh my God, you know, I didn't tell them that I didn't want to do that. So I force myself to do it, and now I feel horrible because I didn't want to do it, right? And as little as that. And it's every day like choosing to change and be better, right, is a choice.
Right.
It's a choice.
I love your point of view and your I guess compassion also at the same time. You have a lot of compassion for the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And, because that's what it's about, right? It's about, okay, we make a mistake. Okay, but you can heal, you can learn, you can transform. And I just find that, you know, it all does begin within, it
Yeah,
really, really does. So, but you've done it. So that's why I think it's such a good thing for people like you to come out and talk about this stuff because it shows that, hey, look how far you've come
yeah,
and you've been there too. And so anyone that thinks that it's not possible can look at you as an example and say, but it is possible.
it is.
Look at Kateryn. You know what I mean? Like you're doing it and it just shows that there's so much like potential that's stored within all of us. It's
Something
really
that
finding it how to tap into it.
something that I also want to mention, I feel like we often look outside of us, like, and we feel like we're the broken ones, right? We're
Hmm.
not broken. Like everybody is experiencing doubt, everybody's experiencing fear, everybody's
Right.
experiencing anxiety, depression, right? Stress. Like everybody experiences these things. The way that we manifest it or let it like guide our lives, right? That's the difference,
Yeah.
right? Because we're not perfect. And it's just like awareness. And something else that I would share, like as a tool or like strategy that has really helped me in the last, I would say, year is my faith.
Please talk about that a little because I think that it's one of the things that the mental health community in general, they're a little bit careful with going there, and talking about that. And yet I think it's one of the, even for me personally, one of the strongest things that really pulled me out of the depths, when I was there, believing in something larger than oneself, so
Yes.
talk about that.
Yeah, so thank you for that space really, because like you said, right, it's not normalized, right?
Hmm.
Often frowned upon, right? Especially when you're talking about science, right?
Hmm.
And the divine, obviously you can measure, you can see evidence, you can't really, justify for it. And so
Hmm.
having that space where, like you said, right, is not about your strength, it's not about your capacity, because there's something bigger than you,
Hmm.
right? There's something bigger than you that really gives you that strength and that power to
Hmm.
be better and to just be. Like I said, I had a women's empowerment brunch yesterday, and I spoke about faith, right? And the way that everything happens for a reason, right? And I feel like a lot of us are like, oh, this happened to me, and we often go to the victim role,
Hmm.
right? But it's there for a reason, for a lesson, right? A blessing, a pivot, right? To pivot you from somewhere. So it's just a way, and it goes back to mindset, right? But going back to the faith, like just find something that you believe in. Could be God, Allah, Buddhism, whatever it is. Just look for something that you believe that is bigger than you, and just follow it and know that everything's gonna be fine, right?
Mm.
You got this, right? And just obviously pray. I pray every day. I read like a meditation and pray here and there, and I go to service, right? And just you'll feel like different. You'll feel
Mm.
like you're not alone, and that you are capable of love, right? You're capable of change, of peace, because
Mhm.
you'll feel more peaceful in that space. So when you're actually manifesting and walking in that space. Um, so yeah, it's just been magical, and I'm so grateful. Um, because as you follow it, you see different ways that it manifests in people, in situations, encounters. For example, community, right? I often talk about community,
Mhm.
and I feel like we meet people for a reason, a season, or a lifetime,
Mm.
right? And so I'm really like passionate about community because we need each other, right? We can't do life alone. And that's something also that I feel like in this space, people feel like they have to go through this alone because they're um ashamed, or they feel like others are going to judge them. And the matter of the fact is that we're not perfect, right? We're not
Right.
perfect. Nobody is.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. Everybody's trying to, everybody's winging it. Right, everybody's winging it. Every day is a new journey, a new day for a new opportunity, a new day for improvement, right? And people look at others like, oh, they got it together because they have 20 years of experience, for example, in a particular thing like public speaking. But the truth is that that person still gets doubt. That person is still antsy before going on stage, or fearful, right? And it's like that's the thing that we have to kind of normalize. It's like, we're not perfect, we're trying to be, and if we're not, then we're so hard on ourselves. So we have to give ourselves more grace.
Yes.
More grace. Yeah.
That's a beautiful word, because it really is. We're not so easy on ourselves, we hold ourselves to these impossible expectations sometimes.
Yes.
And when you do allow for that gentle, compassionate, divine force to enter and, kind of reveal, like, what is it that, bottom line, it's about love, right? It's about
Yeah.
loving oneself and
Yourself.
accepting oneself,
Yes.
right? And once you can do
Others.
that, there's room for loving and accepting others, it's a lot, there's a lot of power. And I love that, that phrase that you mentioned in one of your podcasts, let go and let God. One of my I
Thank
used to be
you.
involved with theater, and he was my director, and he was, a big inspiration in my life. And he would always say that. He would say, let go and let God. And
Yeah.
when he'd say that, it was like I could kind of just like breathe into it and
Mm.
then just let it go. And it's this form of surrender if you just remind
Yes.
yourself,
Yes,
right?
it is.
So it's a way of beginning the possibility of putting seeds out there for miracles, I think, in a way.
It is. It really is. And like, I like that word you use, surrender, because it really is that, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
letting all the control, all the doubts, all the fears, and just being like, whatever happens, happens. God is gonna give me the strength I need to like get to wherever I need to be. And I'm not saying like just be complacent, right? Or
Right.
like stay in your comfort zone, because that's not what it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like the whole, for example, for me, right, the Holy Spirit will like give me different ideas and things that I'm like, oh my God, like that's scary, right? And I've manifested it, right? I
Wow.
manifested it in my actions, right? Because like I said, you being still gives you the chance to listen to certain things that are meant to be in your life, like relationships, projects, your purpose, which is a whole nother topic, right? Like, what is your purpose in this world, and what you're here to do, right?
Right.
um but it's just like being quiet, right? And that sometimes is hard for people to just be still and quiet to be able to manifest, right, your religious or spiritual actions. But it's a journey. It's not like you're gonna like open maybe a Bible, right, for me, for example, and just like it hits me and I'm like saved, right? Is encounters with people, is going
Right.
to service, is like is practicing every day. And I feel like that's the thing that we have to normalize. It is a process. It's something that we
Mm.
work on every day. And people think that it's going to happen over time, or you're going to be perfect in 3 months or 3 years, but you're not.
No, no. It's really that idea that quest for perfection is just so like troublesome, because we're probably never going to get there.
We're not.
Not in this
We're not.
lifetime or the next.
That's the truth.
So sometimes, that kind of, like, I know I was always a high achiever, and I was always like, really, really like hard on myself. And I think that I put myself into so much high pressure when I was young, that I had a personal trauma happen to me when I was in my 20s, and that's what changed the course of my life. So when that occurred, I think it was just because I took it so hard, because I just thought I was supposed to be so perfect.
Mhm.
And, that was a big fall, because I said, wow, I am anything but perfect. So, but what you come forward with is how to be your best self. And now that's a different thing, right? We could rise to this occasion and
Mm-hmm.
have these, ways of becoming better and better. So, speak to some of the things that you like to, encourage others to think about. Like, what a few of the things that I got gleaned from your talks were a few things that have helped me over the years too that I'd like for you to speak to. And one of them is like living on purpose with
Mm.
intent and also living with passion. So, how do you, I guess, maybe coach that in others? Or, what are some of the ways that you have found this to help you in your manifesting your goals?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I feel that the first word that comes to mind is progress. And Tony Robbins, a very great mentor of mine,
Mm,
um, he always says that progress is happiness, right? So if you're like growing and moving forward with something, that's when happiness comes to you because you're achieving something. You're not stagnant or you're not, going back, because you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're excited, right? You're
mm,
growing, you're expanding out of that comfort zone. And so I feel like that would always be the core, right? And I always tell everybody who I coach or like mentor, like my youth, I tell them you have to create a plan, right?
mm,
Like for example, I have here my agenda is like I write over it, I highlight, I circle, a star, whatever it is, right? And having a plan because life goes, right? As we know, life flies by. And if you don't have a plan, you don't be intentional, right? Like
mm,
you mentioned, be intentional and really schedule, right? Oh, I want to lose weight. Okay, you have to schedule your gym time. When are you going to go to
right.
the gym, right? I want to eat healthier. Okay, so maybe schedule your eat, times to eat because sometimes we forget to eat. And that
Mm,
happens to me too, right? It happens to the best of us. And drinking water as very simple and basic as drinking water, sometimes we don't, right? And
mm-hmm,
I'm guilty, right? Like,
mm-hmm,
and that's the thing. I feel like going back to like feeling like you have everything, you could have a business and success and everything, but maybe you don't have the core to like know or meet your basic needs. And
right.
that's true. Um, but yeah, always have your agenda. I use my phone. If people like to be more digital, Google Calendar, right? It's free. Or if you don't want to buy something, but I like to write, right? I like
Mm,
to write and do that. So that has helped me like as long as I can remember as an adult in school, right? That really managing my time and being intentional about what things I want to do and scheduling it, it has given me that fire and that like
mm,
momentum that I need because I look forward to certain things, but I also be intentional and be like, okay, I have to do this certain thing at this date or this time. And so that gives you clarity
mm.
too. Because you know what's going on, you know what you're using your time for. Um, and you look back and like, oh my God, I did so much this week, right? And you get to celebrate it, right? Because if you don't write it down, you probably forget. I have a bad memory, so I would forget. But yeah, it's just as little as that, like managing and using an agenda for me has really helped me a lot in many ways, as I said.
You mentioned Tony Robbins, and I used to love Tony Robbins too. And I listened to so many of his
Yes, I
tapes,
love
and
him.
I invested in myself with him. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so what other like people come to mind when you think of I guess mentors in a sense, or people who have inspired you? Because the way you talk, it's really inspirational. I mean, like it's
Thank you.
so like everything is compact with making good sense,
Mhm.
but with this compassionate edge, you know, that it's like where did you find those pieces of advice in your development, in your healing journey?
Yeah, and that's actually a great question because now, like reflecting back, right? Um, like for example, Joe Osteen is a spiritual
Mm,
leader that I do listen to here and there, and I feel like my faith really started there.
mm,
So, maybe listening to them will be good because he's like motivational and like
Yeah,
spiritual at the same time. So
I
it
like
kind of
it
little
too.
segue into both worlds. Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey,
Mhm.
Les Brown, Eric Thomas. So is like I said, like before, feeding, right? Feeding yourself of
Mm.
those, you know, moments. For example, motivational videos on YouTube, right? They're free. So instead of listening maybe to gossip and music, right? I put that information because I want to feed and be in that space, in that state of mind of growing and knowing that I have it in me and look what these people have, achieved and they went through hell and back, right? Like for example, Tony Robbins, I'm not sure if you know his story, but like his mom used to like abuse him, like put soap down his throat. And like, look at the man.
I
He's
know.
like amazing, right? And so it's like using your pain to your power, right? As we were
Mhm.
saying before. And if he didn't go through all that, right? Maybe he wouldn't be where he is right now, right?
Yeah.
Because that like fueled his purpose. But there's many people, that have inspired me. I'm very intentional about growth, right? Like I try to grow and be better every day. And it has helped me so far, right? And studying, right? I have made investment in classes, seminars, you name it. Wherever it is that I'm growing or learning or something, networking. I'm a good networker too. Sign me up. Yes.
You are great at that. I mean, I have to tell you, it's you're very inspirational. Really. I
Thank
just
you
and
so
I
much.
think it's because I take it like so it hits me hard because you are young. I mean, you're
Mhm.
only in your late 20s, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
To think that you've accomplished a lot of these things that many people struggle with their whole lives. You
Yeah.
know, the you got it right. I mean, it doesn't change. Like in other words, those principles are long-lasting principles that can definitely sustain a person if they get that. If they get
Yeah.
those things down. And a lot of people don't, fall into that stuff until years and years and years of therapy or years and years and years of disappointment, trauma, everything. And sometimes people never get there. So to hear that you did it, it's possible, and you just are, it sounds to me like it's a daily journey for you. And you are in consistent practice of these principles, which I like to also, you know, put forth. You know, teaching, as I'm teaching now, I'm teaching all these kids art. And it's so funny because I try to inject into this, the teaching, like just little principles like that. Like just the idea of practice, like you cannot get there, you cannot do unless you take the practice or take the time. Like the kids want to rush through the process, and
Mhm.
we all think that, like, if we
Mhm.
just like do something real quick, or like, oh, okay, it's going to make a difference. But that time, that quietness, that stillness, that reflection, that you know the purposefulness, it really makes the difference, in getting to the higher mountain. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's part of the whole thing. So doing the work, like you're certainly doing the work consistently and bringing it, to your life and to others. I just love that. Some of the other things that you have discussed are financial things too, and how not to, you know, live in scarcity. Like,
Mhm.
how does a person, I struggle, this is one area that I really have no coaching ability in. I mean, I truly struggle consistently with finances. And I don't even spend that much, but I think I definitely have a scarcity mentality.
Mhm.
Um, and that I have to work on letting go. So, like, how does a person begin to look at money like it's, I guess, like energy or like it's flow? Like, how does a person begin that process?
Yeah. I would say for me, it has been a journey, and I feel like I'm still not an expert in that area for many reasons, right? A lot of it comes from that mentality or the upbringing of like our parents and the way they managed money, right? So that's ingrained in us already, and it's hard to break that pattern,
Yeah.
because the way the lifestyle that we have, right, and the lack of right thinking, the lack of money and all that stuff. So I feel like, yes, like you said, money is energy, and something that I do like practice, right, is like mantra. Like I am attracted to money. Money comes to me in many, different channels and forms abundantly, and so that is something that I've, learned in like, you know, research, listening to like motivational speakers. For example, Bob Proctor has also
Mm.
been a great mentor of mine. He actually passed, I believe it was last year.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and he like the law of attraction, right? It's
Yeah.
like everything, right? If you think that you can get it, you manifest it, and you're like in that state of mind. And it's mindset, right? Like it all kind of connects back to that of your mindset. And with money, I would say like is possible, right? Is one of my great friends says it's not how much you make, it's how you manage what you make,
Hmm.
right? And so I feel like that's a great principle to go by. And obviously budgeting, right? The basics,
Yeah.
budgeting, seeing where your money is going, and being like clear of what it is that you make and how much your expenses are and all that stuff. And like I said, it's something that I also like struggle with, right? Because of the different things, right, that happen to you. For example, I've been unemployed for a couple times in the last year. So obviously that impacts, right, your ability to make money and all that stuff. But God has me, right? God
Yeah.
has me. He's gonna provide. We're not gonna be homeless. And at my young age, I am fortunate enough to say that I own a home, right? In the last
Wow.
2 years now. Wow. In April, we make 2 years with the house. And I'm grateful for that, right?
That's
Because like you
amazing.
said, not a lot of people get there. And I'm blessed because I was surrounded, by adults most of my life, right? So I built that maturity muscle, and I've always been the most mature one everywhere, right? That I go, even though I'm the youngest sometimes. And yeah, like I'm grateful for that. But I feel like even though you're like, maybe in another stage of your life, it's possible,
Yeah.
right? It's possible to make changes and to open up, right? Everything is possible. I feel like I always say, we have it within us. It might be difficult or uncomfortable, you know, but you can do it.
Oh, I love it because now I'm I feel like you're like my little cheerleader. Hold on a second.
You
Just
got
hold on.
this.
Oh, I know. It's like I love hearing it. It's like, hold on. I think my thing just died. Doesn't matter because I don't use the whole thing anyway. But my light just died. Okay, so that's good. So, okay, so going back, um yeah, I it's funny because recent and I'll cut all that out. Recently I've been, I got this new great job and I've been doing it since November. So it's getting me out of the weeds of like, oh my God, like my bills were so high and I just had no idea how I was going to pay them. So I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I did have to readjust, and I needed to figure out these last few months what I am spending. COVID was an interesting animal
Yeah.
because some of us got unemployment, and I was also partial. I was also working, so I got partial unemployment, but it was like I was getting more than I was really making. And then I was like, oh, well, this extra is good because I could use it for this particular thing right now that I wasn't. But the thing is, it didn't allow a person to figure out a budget really easily because you just didn't know when it was going to end. It was like a couple month, it was like a month to month
Yeah.
thing. And then it was like,
Unpredictable.
right. We didn't
Mhm.
know. So it was I think that coming out of that and then like not having the extra money, and then trying to figure out a new career. It was just so overwhelming. I feel like it's settling down now a little bit for me, but I got so far behind that, you know, what do you do? And, you know, but the advice that you're giving is key. And I think that, again, if you have that faith that, you're going to be okay,
Mhm.
that can help. But going back to this idea of living in scarcity, you were in the public, and I want to bring this up because I think it's important about, speaking to how environment shapes our mental health.
Mhm.
And so many people who were suffering, through COVID, a lot of people were in communities that were dealing with like low income communities. And it seemed as though disproportionately they were suffering a lot more because maybe lack of insurance or, lack of whatever care at home, or, just not having the means by which they needed to maybe take care of the situation with COVID. But also it runs into the mental health arena because so many people who struggle can't get the help that they need because they don't have enough money to cover this stuff. So, because therapy is not cheap, I mean, things can be made available. There are things that are cheaper than other things. But, what was it like being on really the front lines of the COVID era? Even through physical seeing inside these hospitals during the physical illness, and also like afterwards dealing with like the impact on it on care, or excuse me, the impact on health, with emotional distress after COVID would hit. I'm sure that you've seen a lot of things and in communities that were struggling. So what was that like?
It was actually very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking. I started the pandemic working for Montefiore. So it's a hospital in the Bronx. And so I was actually in the hospital, right, when this was like when it started. I spent like 3 months working in the hospital. I had to go in every day, spray myself, gloves, goggles, mask, gowns. Like it was
Yeah.
really bad, and like spray myself when I got home, spray myself when I got to my office, hand sanitizer, wash. Like it was a whole like
Oh,
demoralizing
yeah.
experience, right? Because you're like, oh my God, like this is my life now.
Yeah.
Right. And apart from all that stuff that obviously was precautions, is like seeing everybody, walking in the hallways, right? Like maxed out gowns. And an experience that I had very like emotional was a friend that worked at Montefiore also. I went to visit her at where she was working, and she was actually in one of the entrances of the hospital, the children's hospital. And she's a very personal friend of mine. So we would hug normally for like our greetings, and we couldn't hug, right? Because it was protocol to like distance and all that stuff. And I was just crying. Like that was a very emotional for me because I'm like, oh my God, like I can't hug my friend, right? And it was just so lonely and scary, and also like seeing body bags being like
Oh,
transported in the hallways, and just like I lost also family members, so I was part of the whole experience, right? Like from the front to the back and
yeah.
everywhere. And so it was just scary and like so transformative experience. And then I left in June 2020 from Montefiore, and I was basically like, oh yeah, sign me up, I'll be in the front lines of COVID. And I did it for many reasons, right? Because I feel like it was a great time to like make an impact and be part of something, right, that really needed me. um and I would go to the testing sites where people go with COVID, right, to get tested. And I would like be helping people, and it's like like once you're in that environment of helping, you kind of forget that these people are like sick, right? So you're like, obviously
Yeah.
I had a mask and stuff like that, but it's not like I wanted to isolate from them because they needed my help. I was there to help them, right? That was the whole point. And there was a lot of loss, right? Like a lot of people passed away, and fear, right? A lot of fear of like losing people, of dying, right? Of just isolation, right? You had to be isolated. So it was just a whole ball of like mental health crisis, if you will. Like if we could put like
Yeah.
a name, a label on it, it was a mental health crisis
Mm-hmm.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we haven't recovered fully, right? We're
No.
still seeing the ripples effect, people with, long-term, stuff that comes up because of maybe the vaccine or because they got COVID, right? Like there's so many things that
Mm-hmm.
kind of came after that. Um, but something that I do realize, apart from it being tragic and very horrible, to say the least, it has brought to the surface many things that people
Yes.
haven't realized in the past,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So I do give it that. I
Yeah.
do give it that. It has been like a kind of switching the clock,
Yeah.
of many things for people. A lot of realization, a lot of time alone, realizing they're not happy with their spouses anymore, right? Realizing that they need help, they can be alone, right? Or I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, whatever it is. So I think everybody got their whole experience of like, something has to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was that for me. It was that for so many people. Like it just really was like a resetting experience. Like you couldn't walk out of COVID not having learned something about yourself on a deep level.
Yeah, and
Because
I guess we have that to thank, right?
yeah,
The whole pandemic, which is crazy, has been almost 3 years now
yeah.
in March. Um, but yeah, it's insane. It has changed us.
So when did you start your podcast? Like it was
Yeah,
what was it in the 2021?
2022. So last year, I actually, was working, right, for the city still 2 years later, right? I was still working for the city. We were contact tracing, doing all that, the whole nine. And the program, right, COVID was going down in the numbers. And so we were let go, right? The
Mm,
city let us go. And so I was unemployed. And obviously that's a very challenging experience for me because I've gone to school, I have experience, etc. And just like it was very changing for me. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, this happened, right? I need to do something that I've been sitting on for a long time and start talking, right? Because Geminme has really been on my heart for a couple years, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start a podcast. I'm just gonna start talking because I feel like I'm overthinking it. Well, I have to like have all my ducks in a row. And that's a whole nother thing, right? We've been talking about it, trying to be perfect and have all your ducks in a row to like launch a business or launch a podcast or launch a relationship or whatever it is that you're like contemplating thinking about or that you want to do, just do it,
right.
right? Because that was the moment for me. Like I don't have an excuse anymore. I don't
Yeah.
have a job. I have all
Right.
the time of the world. So I just started doing it, started recording myself, right? When I was driving, I got more inspiration. So if that works for you. But yeah, I just started doing it and I had no idea what I was doing. And then little by little, I started asking questions, people who had podcasts. And so yeah, it's been a year in May.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is interesting the whole podcast thing because
Mhm.
at there's a point at which you look back and you feel really good because you're like, you know what? I committed to speaking
That's
my
something,
voice,
yeah.
and it is hard work and me too. I didn't know what I was doing. I never did anything audio related, nothing. So for me, to learn something brand new at a later age, and it was similar because I didn't have a job, and I was like, you know what, I need to get creative. And my job was creativity because I had my painting business. So it was like without that, I was like, if I don't get creative, but obviously I had a message to tell.
Mhm.
So I like to encourage anyone who's out there thinking about being a podcaster.
Yeah.
Do it, do it, do it, because it's actually a pretty small field still. It's
Mm-hmm.
only like 120,000 podcasters worldwide. So it's not that many.
Yeah.
So to be part of that is nice, because you know that you can use your platform to speak about things you care about. And I'm so happy that you're doing it, because what you bring forward is really important.
Thank
Um
you.
a few more things I want to just like touch upon
Yeah.
before I let you go.
Please
Um,
hit me.
um, letting go of guilt.
Mm,
Okay. This is like something that many of us struggle with. So there's like a couple things I want to like just touch upon, because I think that these are things that if we were able to harness
mm,
and have our understanding of, these are things that we can add to our reminders for ourselves to continue to sustain mental wellness.
mm.
So, and you do that, by bringing it up and talking about it. So, the few things that I love that you mentioned, I'm just going to bring them up and then you could expound on them. Letting go of guilt, creating boundaries, and don't take things personally.
Yes.
Those three things I love. So speak to those things a little bit. Like how is it that, you know, if we really do think about those things, what can that do for us?
Yeah. So I'll start with guilt. I feel like is very detrimental, right, to our person. Because even like if we didn't go to the gym today, for example, me, I didn't go to the gym today because I was, I had a crazy weekend and and I don't feel guilty, right? And I should maybe. I don't know. I said that I would go to the gym and I'll probably go to the gym after this. And that's the thing, right? So guilt is a thing that is there present. And you're like, oh, I'm guilty. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't keep the word. I didn't put myself first, or I did this to this person. It could be many scenarios. Guilty of speaking bad to somebody, right? Which I've also done, right? And it's like, okay, there's something there. Why did I do that? Right? Like I say, I always go back to awareness. Why do I do that? Or why did I, do that? And how can I fix it?
Mm.
Right? Or what action could I take to be different? For example, in my essence of my dilemma with the gym, right? I'm like, you know what? I need the time to take, rest, right? To be restful. And I'll go tomorrow, right? And that's totally fine, because we're human. We
Right.
could, not go to the gym today and the world is going to be okay, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like we're hard on ourselves, like, oh no, I didn't keep the word to myself. I didn't keep my commitment to myself, and that often eats us up, right? And I'm making this about ourselves because at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of inner work that we do, and that commitment to ourselves really kind of sets the standards
Mm.
or boundaries that we put with others. And the reason maybe why you lashed out on that person was because you know um maybe thoughts or beliefs that you have towards that person, or resentment, right? Or like, there's something there that kind of made it happen,
Mm.
right? So giving yourself grace that you're human, you're an process, you're an evolving process of awareness, of knowing, you're not perfect, right? I often keep coming to that, but I feel like we have to give ourselves grace a lot, because we want to be perfect and others want us to be perfect sometimes, right? They expect that from us.
Mm.
And is also vocalizing and telling people like, oh, like, I feel bad because I spoke bad to you, and this is maybe why, forgive me, right? Sometimes it's hard to ask for forgiveness, right?
Mm.
Or and it's just planting that seed. Communication for me has been a big one too, right?
Mm.
Because if you kind of internalize that resentment, internalize that guilt, is having a very genuine conversation with yourself or with that other person that you might feel guilty towards, right?
Mhm.
And tell them what happened and your process, right? Because it's a mental process that you're like, torturing yourself with, right? And yeah, just speak up, right?
Yeah.
Go through the process with yourself if it's towards you or that person that you feel guilty towards. Boundaries, right? So boundaries for me has been a big one with my mom, for example, right? And in our culture, I would say there's no boundaries. I'm not sure if you can maybe
I can
speak
relate.
relate, yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like there was no boundaries. It's like they expect us to always be available, do what they say, right? And basically no, you have no voice, no space, no person, nothing. You have nothing, right?
Mm.
You're nothing. And I feel like that has been an issue for me, especially when, we moved. Um, and I was like, no, like this is my space. Like I did this, right? And you have to respect it. And that
Yeah.
was vocalizing it. And yes, we had fights. Yes, she fought back. Yes, she screamed. I cried. I screamed. I cried. And we had very very, I would say, intense exchange that had to happen,
Mm.
unfortunately, right? Because if you don't set your boundaries, if you don't vocalize what is it that you want, people are gonna step all over you, and they're gonna keep doing what they think is best for them, not what is best for you, because they don't know what your boundaries are. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what is it that you could accept, what that feels good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So boundaries is very important. I'll just leave it there in terms of my mom, but obviously you can use this technique with anybody that you feel like you have to set boundaries with. And then don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. So for me, I would say the very open example will be, for example, my mom, right? So when I told her about my feelings and things that I thought that she should have done, or that feelings that I had, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? She apologized, right? She acknowledged, right, what I was telling her. And she also told me that she didn't experience it herself, so she didn't have it within her, right? So
Mm.
in that moment, I realized that she couldn't give me what she didn't have,
Right.
right? And that's something also that we have to, right, not taking it personal. And even though she's my mom and she was supposed to be there, she was supposed to hug me, she was supposed to say I love you. Her experience as a mom, right? It wasn't She wasn't giving me what I was supposed to get or what I should get. It was what she had,
Mm.
right? So it's not because I didn't deserve it or I wasn't worthy of it, right? It was because she didn't have it within her, so she couldn't give it to me. So kind of a dynamic is a very tricky and sticky dynamic that I'm experiencing, like sharing with you right now. But still, like even so, like for example, if somebody lashes out at you, right, or treats you a certain way, that person is going through something, right? It might not even be about you, and we internalize, oh my God, that person hates me. I'm not, and then it's giving that space, like setting a boundary. Okay, person, you did this and that. What is that about, right? And having that conversation, maybe not in that moment, right, but a little later. But just knowing that the essence of that, not taking it personal, is knowing that everybody is going through something, and that we're all human. We are a work in progress. We're not perfect, and the way that we treat people, the way that we act, it's just, we're human.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. So don't take it personal. So, somebody did this to you or said this about you or whatever is a reflection of them,
Mm-hmm.
of what they're going through, what they think. Yeah.
Well, all these things really add to us reclaiming our power, because those are all things we can do. We can create boundaries. We can let go of guilt. We don't have to take things personally. These are things that, if we really, I mean, I would say there's a lot of times we create our own major distresses
Mm-hmm.
because of all the things, the stories that we tell ourselves behind the things that happen to us. And if we could just like kind of unpack those things and understand, get some clarity on it.
Right.
And I love the communication, like making it a decision for us to communicate. A lot of the times there's this other a friend of mine who's a lovely, wonderful person as well. And he talks about how if you don't have it in you to maybe directly talk to that person, you write them a letter,
Yeah,
and then you don't even have to
yeah,
present the letter. You can just throw it out, but
yeah,
getting it out of our
exactly.
heads, out of our hearts, sometimes helps. So all of these things are great. And you discuss all this kind of stuff on your podcast with great guests as well.
Mhm.
So, everyone who is interested in finding out more about Kateryn, please do. Kateryn, how can people follow you? And what is this podcast? I know is available on Spotify, but is it available across all podcast platforms and locations?
Yes. So it's Geminme The Podcast. Gem in Me together. It's on Apple, is on Amazon, is on Spotify, is on our Heart Radio. And I also post some things on YouTube. So my YouTube channel, Gem and Me Empowers. And you also could find some content there. I'm also on Instagram. So Gem and Me The Podcast, my Instagram, or Kateryn Ferreira is also my personal. If you guys want to follow me on my personal page, that's totally fine. I, share content, events, and I'll be launching my also coaching program and challenge. So stay tuned on that if you're interested in being on this journey with me. I'll be able to help you kind of, battle with all these things that we do on our daily lives. And so I know that, the future is bright. We have so much, things to offer, right? Like I said, potential is infinite. You have a lot of potential. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh my
And
God. Before you go, what is your website?
yeah, so my website is geminme.com.
Okay, geminme.com. Okay. So
Yeah.
that all that stuff can be found there because all get right. And we could, you have an umbrella of everything that you do on your website. So everyone can like look you up and explore more.
Yeah.
This is just also great. I am so thankful that
Oh, thank you.
you were able to come on this program and share your insight, your inspiration, your energy, your compassionate ways. I find you to be just like I don't know, just like a burst of good feeling.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it, your kind
Oh,
words and just having me on here because I feel like we have to have these conversations and kind of normalizing things. Because people feel like they're alone, but they're not.
yes,
Like we're all going through it, different patterns or different journeys, right? Different things going on, different sets of our lives. But we're all trying to make it,
yeah,
and it's a daily thing. You just have
it
to choose
is.
it and surround yourself with it, be intentional, work on yourself. I feel like working on yourself, if that's the whole point, right? Of the gem in you, like you have it in you. So you have to work on yourself to be able to project that and kind of live it.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And it's so exciting. It's so exciting. I feel like so I don't know, enthusiastic right now. Like,
Yay!
yay!
I love it. Thank you. I'm
I
so
love
happy
it
that I was able
too.
to transmit,
Oh,
that power and that energy to you. So thank you.
you certainly were. And I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you, Kateryn.
Thank you. Bye guys. Talk to you
Okay,
soon.
so I am going to